Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Well, welcome to the program. First, we're going to start off with a coverage of the war between the Russian Federation, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and its Ukrainian proxy forces. Now, even the deep state map, the Ukrainian-supported deep state map, is now acknowledging that the envelopment of Pokrovsk in the area around Pokrovsk is all but complete. The deep state map tends to utilize what they call this gray area, where they will say that there is continued fighting and it is contested. Now, that may be the case. That may be the case in some instances. In other instances, not so much. It's widely understood that Russian forces have enveloped Ukrainian forces in this area. Not only that, we are seeing Russian forces continuing to advance and make gains in other areas all along the line of contact. Now, as we move into the causes of some of the changes in war, I want to get into that a little bit. There seems to be this thought process that the FPV drone has permanently changed the face of war, and I'm going to attempt to counter that with my analysis on what is to come. I fully believe that drones are going to change and have changed the shape of conflict, but is what we are currently seeing in the Ukraine indicative of the ways wars will be fought in the future? Meaning, will the FPV drone be the apex predator that it is currently in the Ukraine? And I would like to hit the pause button on that as well, because I don't believe the drone is the quote-unquote apex predator. That is the perception, but reality is a little bit different. The apex predator in the Ukraine, the reality is intelligence, the quote-unquote kill chain leading to, in most occasions, a hypersonic weapon system coming from the Russian Federation destroying a Ukrainian target, or a ballistic missile or a cruise missile. That is still the apex predator. That is still the most lethal weapon system, that and mass fires of precision artillery as well. Still very, very lethal. The Ukrainian and even Russian FPV drone has created a certain perception because of the content that is available to observe some of these strikes. And then you, the viewer, believe that that is the new way of war. And it's not. And I'm going to get into that a little bit deeper. But first, there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of content, military content providers talking about the prospects of conflict between the United States and Venezuela. And what would that look like? Well, what I want to do right now is I want to help the military layperson, a person who really does not understand military affairs, and I'm going to try and assist that person. I'm going to try and assist the ill-informed, uninformed, low-informed individual about what would happen if the United States decided to unleash its military capacity against Venezuela. So what I'd like to do is now change your thought process towards the boxing ring. Think about a prize fight. And what we're going to do is we are going to take Zoran, the destroyer of cities, and we are going to place him in the ring with 10-ounce boxing gloves. And we are going to have him fight George Foreman. So try to envision this, a boxing ring with Zoran, the destroyer of cities, versus Big George Foreman. Now you could utilize George Foreman in his prime when he knocked out Smoking Joe Frazier, or you could envision George Foreman when he knocked out Michael Moore. Doesn't matter. So George Foreman, Zoran Mondami, the United States versus Venezuela. That would essentially be the outcome. Again, think about that prize fight and what you would see, that mauling that would take place. That is what would happen in the case of a direct engagement if the United States decided to decapitate the Venezuelan political leadership, but more importantly, its military. Just focused on military to military, not afterwards or regime change or what would come after. Irrelevant, but again, military on military. That is about what you would see. George Foreman versus Zoran, the destroyer of cities. And that would be that. Now back to the continued conflict between the Russian Federation, Ukraine, and kind of where we're heading in terms of drones. Now again, this system here, this FPV drone, with what is essentially an RPG-7 strapped underneath of it, that is perceived as the apex predator. Now, look, is it effective? Yes. Has it caused widespread damage to both the Russian military and the Ukrainian military? Yes, absolutely. But with that being said, you have some serious defense contractors, defense corporations looking at what has happened not just in the Ukraine, but has also happened even in Iraq. I mean, that was originally some of the first places we saw the use of some of these FPV drones. Now, it wasn't really fully understood on how effective that they could be until we saw what has happened inside of the Ukraine. Now, look, it's not just the use of the FPV drone. There are other factors that are coming into play in this conflict. Intelligence. Real-time intelligence being provided by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in the United States to Ukrainian forces and NATO forces on the ground. But with that being said, you have several massive, just here in the West, right? You have Lockheed Martin, you have Raytheon, you have large companies like Elbit Systems, Northrop Grumman, and these are the big boys that understand that this threat needs to be eliminated. That you can't have these small FPV drones handicapping maneuver warfare and essentially destroying kind of future-facing defense projects, right? You hear people talking about, well, the main battle tank is going by the wayside. That this very expensive project is going to be undone by this system. $300 system is going to undo a multi-hundreds of millions, billion-dollar project. So these defense contractors, these defense corporations, are going to work to disallow these systems from being undone by these systems. It is absolutely going to happen. Now, what's interesting is really the simplicity of these FPV drones in terms of how you can defeat them, right? So first, how do you detect a FPV drone? What's the quickest way to know that you are coming under an attack by an FPV drone? Is it radar? Is it optical systems? Well, the answer to that is neither. It's acoustic. You will hear an FPV drone, a human will hear an FPV drone well over 1,000 feet away. A dog will hear an FPV drone almost a mile away. And it makes a very specific acoustic signal. So this is where the sensor technology comes into play. Then, once you have this acoustic signature identified and you know it's inbound, you have other systems as well, radar, optical, thermal, what have you. Now, these companies, and it's not always just the big boys either. You have smaller companies like Anduril, AeroVironment, Kratos, smaller companies that are going to reap massive profits in creating systems that have the ability to intercept and destroy these FPV drones. Now, this system here is going to be something that would engage more or less like an Iranian Shahed drone. Now, it's funny, and especially if we kind of circle back to what's happening in the Ukraine, right? The mainstream media would lead you, the viewer, to believe that some 45-year-old Ukrainian with an AK-47 or a manpad is what is shooting down these incoming Russian drones. And that's not the case. There are other systems that are being used that are not being talked about, that are being tested actively in the Ukraine. And these are incredibly advanced systems that are being utilized in an attempt to shoot down these inbound Russian drones. An example is right here in front of you. This is the Roadrunner. This is a vertically launched, vertical takeoff anti-drone system. And this is produced by Anduril. You have another system that's actively being used as the Roadrunner. This system was developed in conjunction with Raytheon. Again, very advanced system. Not just the kill vehicle, but there's a lot of systems that come into play to identify these inbound drones. And again, one of those systems that's not often talked about is the acoustic signature. But right now we are in a state where the technology that will eliminate these FPV drones, and these FPV drones in the cases of this system here, you're talking about directed energy type of systems, microwave systems that are going to simply make it impossible for these FPV drones to operate in the very near future. We are not that far away from these FPV systems being completely irrelevant. Now, they will be relevant in insurgency type domains of conflict, but if you're looking at two near peer adversaries, two technologically advanced nation states going to war, this system that you see here is going to go by the wayside, probably sooner rather than later. We are right now on the precipice of technologies that will just completely eliminate those systems. Completely gone. And again, if you are an investor, pay close attention to some of these smaller companies that are out there. AeroVironment, Anduril is not yet public. It may be public in the future, but obviously those are some possible winners that could make you some money if you choose to do that. But again, that pretty much does it for today. As always, thank you for joining us. We'll have more to come very, very soon. Good day.